I'd have to speak against the motion. I think money is one of the last things we should look for in a settlement. Money is something that the white man's brought here. It's used as a medium of exchange. In the long run, history has proven again and again that money in the end is actually worthless. Like Mr. Starrett said, you can't put dollar values on our culture, on our rights as the first citizens of this province.
Mic number 2.
Jerry Jack here from the Mowagit Band. I think too many times we've been sitting on our ass now waiting for the white man to come up and tell us how much they're going to give us. We have no choice. When it comes down to land claims and raw materials and all the things they have exploited, they're going to come up with a real cheap, ridiculous figure for us. So it's about time, I think, that we told them what we want. And if you're not happy with what the figure is that Sai put on the floor, tell his assembly. We have no choice. We'll have to. I agree with the motion. I'm talking for the motion too. So I think it's about time we told the government what we want, and instead of waiting for them to tell us what they're going to give us.
Mic number 2.
Thank you. As seconder of the motion, it doesn't say in the motion that we are giving up any cultural or any Indianness we have today. If you believe you're not an Indian, then you don't belong here. All we're asking for is money that has been taken from the resources since the white man started raping our land of all the resources that we did own.
Thank you. Because of the lateness of the hour, you can move for adjournment, and debate on the motion can take place first thing tomorrow morning, if this is your wish.
No.
Mic number 1.
Clark Smith from the Smockham Band. I think here we are again. We're got a motion on the floor and we're going all over the place. But I think what we need is perhaps the motion has to be written so it'll be specific in what it says. And I think another thing you have to consider, I think there was a motion in Terrace dealing with the government is supposed to give us an offer or something. Now, I think I agree in the motion to extent that the white people owe us money on the things they have taken away from us, which we can't get back anymore except by money. But I think that the motion should read that the money that we would receive from the government be a small portion of the settlement. I think this is what's wrong with the motions that we put on the floor. They are not specific enough. They don't explain enough, and this is why people misunderstand. I think some of our delegates don't realize just because a motion goes on the floor that you can't change the words so they can understand it.
Would you like the motion read again? Yes. Before I read it over again, I'll recognize mic number 3.
Gordon Antwine. I speak against the motion primarily because I do not think that money will bring back the people that have died through disease, bring back the happy feelings that people have lost through a thing called genocide. I also speak against the motion because will money bring back those trees that were taken out for it? I feel any settlement of any land claims also has to be controlled by the Indian people. Money, unfortunately, isn't one of those things that can be controlled, except by those that print it.
Mic number 2.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to give my interpretation as I read the motion as it was presented. And I see this whole issue as being much like a rent issue with somebody who owns an apartment or a house. I think what the motion says is that you've been in our house for a couple hundred years now, and you owe us some rent for that. If you want to stay in our house, then we've got to sit down and negotiate the rent that you're going to pay to stay in our house, but we still own the house, and that isn't for sale. I thought we made it very clear in Terrace that the Aboriginal rights of the Indian people in this country isn't for sale, and that they'll never be for sale. And we swore in solidarity that we were going to follow on that motion, that we were going to practice Indian sovereignty. And I hear people stand up talking about whether they're scared or not of selling out. I thought we were going to start practicing our rights so that we would never have to sell those rights. But what that motion says is that you've done something wrong, you've been here, you haven't paid, you owe us a chunk of money, please pay that up. And from then on, we've still got to settle the land claim issue, which is talking about those people staying in our house in the future. And I don't think we're going to kick 2 million people out of BC, although some of us would like to. I don't think we're going to. I think those people are going to stay here, and if they're going to stay here, then please pay the rent, because we own the house. Thank you.
Mic number 2.
Ken Basil, Bonaparte. I'd like to speak in favor of the motion for the simple reason that I believe that the people within the province of British Columbia, the Native people, I believe it's time to collect the rent. The rent has been long overdue. Like I've stated before in Terrace, that we are the landlords of this land. And when we speak about negotiating with the government, like we have to be very cautious and be ready before we do sit down on the tables to negotiate with the provincial and federal government of Canada. That's one area that I'm totally confused, because to me, once we sit down and start negotiating with the federal government and the provincial government of Canada, it means that we're selling the Mother Earth. But like it was stated earlier, like all we are asking is for compensation, which is rightfully ours. Just compensation. We all know that the government of Canada is not going to return the lands that they've taken away from us. If they do return some land, it's not going to be rich in minerals. It's not going to be rich in timber. They're probably going to return lands back to the Native people here in the province of BC, where there are semi-deserts where we cannot develop, and possibly swamps. That's the kind of compensation that the government of Canada would probably give. When we as Native people within the province of British Columbia demand the returns of our lands. Because the Native people of North America hasn't received justice in the past, and it's not going to start. We will have to stop asking the government. We will have to start demanding to the government of Canada. And for direction, back in Williams Lake, during the General Assembly up there, it was totally agreed at that General Assembly that there was going to be various Indian organizations that was selected and accepted and agreed upon by the General Assembly at that time, that they were going to be sitting on a negotiating team. Now, I was just wondering if these organizations has gotten together since the General Assembly up in Williams Lake to pool our resources together. And when I'm saying resources, I'm speaking in an area of money to create a people's movement here that could be totally supported by the people, not by government handouts. These are the areas that we have to take into consideration. Like if we're going to continuously accept money from the government, and yet in turn trying to fight the same government, it's going to be very difficult to mobilize the people within the province of British Columbia and to receive true commitment. We've talked about unifying the people on the reserve level, and it has happened in some districts already. In areas where we lack direction or we lack information, I believe we can look around us and see our next brothers and sisters where we could possibly ask guidance and direction from. The statement that I made up in Terrace, I've sort of sat back and thought about the statement that I made up there. Like I've committed myself to the American Indian movement, and I'm the spokesman for the American Indian movement.
Are you through speaking on the motion?
What I would like to say, that we have to start sitting down and creating a plan and present it to the government and state this is our demand, and it has to be met with, to be met or else.
Thank you. Mic number 3.
Neil Sterrett, Mackenzie. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to just give you a couple of statistics. I worked in mining exploration for about 8 years in all parts of Canada and a couple of parts of the rest of the world. I started my mining career in northern British Columbia, where the copper deposits, some of the biggest copper deposits in Canada lay. And the first deposit I worked on was is a proven reserve of 300 million tons of 0.5% copper.
Sir, are you going to make a point to the motion? I must
I'm
ask
speaking
you.
against the motion and I'm making my point. The 300 million tons of copper, when I worked it out at 50 cents per pound for copper, which is no longer a realistic figure, it's higher than that. At that rate, that mine is worth $30 billion. Now, if we assume that there are probably 10 more mines like that in British Columbia, and that if we want to derive royalties from a mine or have the government set aside one mine for the Indian people in the province to derive our money from, if they set aside that one mine, there's $30 million over the life of the $30 billion, I'm sorry, over the life of that mine for the Indian people, let alone looking at royalties and other properties. So we can't be talking dollars. We have to have the facts on money before we can speak about it. So I'm speaking against the motion on that basis.
Thank you. Mic number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think there have been some very worthwhile debates on this subject. And on the motion, it is a very positive motion. Some have stated that it is possibly premature, and there have been other comments. But I do believe that I must consider some of the thoughts of the elders that we have traveled with. One of the elders, who does not travel with us anymore, stated at one time that he said, "You young fellas, you make decisions just as fast as those planes that you fly on." And further, he said, when the elders did in their previous endeavors in the land claim make decisions, they didn't make them overnight. They didn't take 1 week. At times it took 2 months. So I think in consideration of the positive attitude of the motion and the depth of consideration that it requires, I sincerely hope that we do give it a lot of thought and become prepared with definite thoughts in the morning because of the fact that I said it is very positive. And then we can determine our decisions after sleeping on it. And all I ask is that we do sleep on this one positive motion overnight. With that message, Madam Chairman, I would like to move adjournment for the day.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? John George? Before we adjourn, Bill Mussel has a couple announcements, and then you can dash home and watch the hockey game.
Will you just hold on? I have a request from the Vacancy representative on the negotiating team, Bill Lightbone, to please call together, read it adjournment of this meeting, those representatives of the locals from BC, and would you please meet with Bill on the stage here. The second thing, you had handed out to you a green pamphlet on Kokalitsa which describes what's going on there. There's an open house there tomorrow and the next day until 8 p.m. Please look at it, and we look forward to meeting with you first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you. Ron?
I'd just like to make an announcement before everybody leaves. There will be a meeting of the West Coast people, all the people here from the West Coast, starting immediately that everybody else leaves. Thank you.